am live. Today is the 18th of September. I am reading The Comedians. It's a novel by Greene, published in 1966. I'm in the second part of this book now. Chapter 4, Roman 4. It's the story of Mr. Brown, who's the teller of the story, Mr. Smith, who was a presidential candidate, and Mr. Jones, who calls himself Major Jones. The story plays in Haiti, and we are now explaining how Mr. Brown came to own a hotel, etc. And we're in the present again now, because Mr. Brown has found a corpse in his pool and he needed some help. I continue Roman 4. At the same time, the minister proved himself to be a man of his word. We were allowed in due course to see the prisoner. Oh yeah, Mr. Jones has been put into prison. At the police station the next afternoon, the sergeant was the most important figure, far more important than the minister's secretary who accompanied us there. He tried in vain to catch the eye of the great man, but he had to wait his turn at the counter with all the other suppliants. Mr. Smith and I sat under the snapshots of the dead rabble, which were still wilting on the wall after all these months. Mr. Smith looked at them and hastily looked away. In a little room opposite us sat a tall Negro in a natty civilian suit. He had his feet up on his desk, and he stared at us continually through dark glasses. Perhaps it was only my nerves that lent him an expression of repulsive cruelty. "He'll remember us again," Mr. Smith said with a smile. The man knew that we had spoken of him. He rang a bell on his desk and a policeman came. Without moving his feet or turning his gaze away from us, he asked a question, and the policeman glanced at us and replied, and the long stare went on. I turned my head, but inevitably after a little while I looked back into the two black circular lenses. They were like binoculars through which he was observing the habits of two insignificant animals. "An ugly customer," I said uneasily. Then I noticed that Mr. Smith was returning the stare. One couldn't see how often the man blinked. Because of the dark glasses, he might easily have closed his eyes and rested them, and we would not have known. Yet it was Mr. Smith's blue, relentless gaze which won the day. The man got up and closed the door of his office. "Bravo," I said. "I shall remember him too," Mr. Smith said. "He probably suffers from acidity." "It's highly possible, Mr. Brown." We must have been there more than half an hour before the foreign secretary's secretary got any attention. In a dictatorship, ministers come and go. In Port-au-Prince, only the chief of police, the head of the Tonton Macoute, and the commander of the palace guard had any permanence. They alone could offer security to their employees. The minister's secretary was dismissed by the sergeant like a small boy who has run an errand, and the corporal led us down the long corridor of cells that smelt like a zoo. Jones sat on an upturned bucket beside a straw mattress. His face was crisscrossed with pieces of plaster, and his right hand was bandaged to his side. He had been tidied up as well as could be, but his left eye could have done with a raw steak. His double-breasted waistcoat looked more conspicuous than ever, with a small rusty stain of blood. "Well, well," he greeted us with a happy smile. "Look who's here." "You seem to have been resisting arrest," I said. "That's their story," he said brightly. "Got a cigarette?" I gave him one. "You haven't a filter tip?" "No." "Oh well, mustn't look a gift horse. I felt this morning things have taken a turn for the better. They gave me some beans at midday and Dr. Chapp came and worked on me." "What are you charged with?" Mr. Smith asked. "Charged?" He seemed as puzzled at the word as the foreign secretary had been. "What do they say you've done, Mr. Jones?" "I haven't had much of an opportunity to do anything. I didn't even get through the customs." There must be some reason. A mistaken identity, perhaps? They haven't explained things very clearly to me yet. He touched his eye with caution. I look a bit the worse for wear, don't I expect? Is that all you have for a bed? Mr. Smith asked with indignation. I slept in worse places. Where? It's hard to imagine. He said vaguely and unconvincingly, oh, in the war, you know. He added, I think the trouble is, I had the wrong introduction. I know you warned me, but I thought you were exaggerating, like the purser. Where did you get your introduction? I asked. Someone I met in Leopoldville. What were you doing in Leopoldville? It was more than a year ago. I do a lot of travelling. I had the impression that to him the cell was unremarkable, like one of the innumerable airports on a long route. You've got to get you out of here, Mr. Smith said. Mr. Brown has told your chargé. We've both seen the Secretary of State. We've stood bail. Bail? He had a sense of reality. He had a better sense of reality than Mr. Smith. He said, I tell you what you can do for me, if you wouldn't mind. Of course, I'll pay you back later. Give $20 to the sergeants as you go out. Of course, Mr. Smith said, I think if you think it will do any good. Oh, it will do good, all right. There's another thing. I have to get that business of the introduction straight. Have you a bit of paper and a pen? Mr. Smith provided them, and Jones began to write. You haven't an envelope? I'm afraid not. Then I'd better phrase it a bit differently. He hesitated a moment, and then he asked me, what's the French for factory? You seen? I was never good at languages, but I picked up a bit of French. In Leopoldville? Give that to the surgeon and ask him to pass it on. Can he read? I think so. He stood up as he returned the pen and said in a polite tone of dismissal, It was good of you chaps to call. You've got another appointment? I asked him, ironically. To tell you the truth, those beans are beginning to work. I'll have an appointment with a bucket. If either of you can spare a little more paper. We collected between us 3 old envelopes, a receipted bill, a page or two from Mr. Smith's engagement book, and a letter to me, which I thought I had destroyed, from a New York real estate agent, regretting that at the moment he had no clients interested in the purchase of hotel properties in Port-au-Prince. The spirit of the man, Mr. Smith exclaimed in the passage outside. It's what brought you people safely through the Blitz. I'll get him out of her if I have to go to the president himself. I looked at the fold of paper in my hand. I recognized the name written there. It was that of an officer in the Tonton Macoute. I said, I wonder if we ought to involve ourselves any further. We are involved, Mr. Smith said, with pride, and I knew that he was thinking in the big terms I could not recognize, like mankind, justice, the pursuit of happiness. It was not for nothing that he had been a presidential candidate. So that was the end of chapter 4, and I read chapter 5 soon.